Behind me is a extremely rare site, a excavated and reconstructed ceremonial earth lodge. This was buried underground, but archaeologists dug in and found the clay floor completely intact, along with clay effigies, 70 seats, aligned in a sort of rising slope that suggested people of lowest rank sat at the lowest levels of the seats, people's highest rank sat at the highest. Clay hearth at the center, and many bird effigies inside. Based on what they found, they reconstructed it using the type of wood that would have been used and the type of clay that would have been used for the floors, while still preserving those originally excavated features. I can't see any of them because we're in a pandemic and we can't go inside enclosed spaces lest we get each other sick and die. Okay, we're in Ocmulgee in Georgia, outside of Macon, Georgia, and there's a lot to cover because there's a lot of history. And this site probably will be the centerpiece site of this episode. Probably should have done a little research into it. Let's just free verse off the top of my head. This area has been occupied for 17,000 years. Continual occupation. Of course, not permanent settlements during nomadic days of the hunter-gatherers of the Paleo-Indian, but they did stay here. Clovis points have been found all over the area.
The Clovis people were a prehistoric culture who are named for their distinctive and sophisticated for the time stone and bone tools. They traversed and hunted the North American continent from roughly 11,500 BC to 10,800 BC, near the end of the last glacial period. They hunted animals like the woolly mammoth and are the central figures of such tenuous theories that they are the reason for the mammoth's extinction, hunting it out of existence, and that they were the first settlers of the North American continent, having migrated from the northwest and across the Bering Land Bridge during a lull in the last glaciation period. These two theories have been the gold standard for a long, long time, but are on the verge of being completely disproven.
Fire pits have been found all over the area, dating from as far back as 15,000 BC. Think of that, folks. People were hunting woolly mammoth, saber-toothed tigers, giant sloths in this area. It was an extremely important place. Eventually, the Mississippians, eventually the Hopewell came here and settled and formed small communities.
We've covered the Hopewell enough in this series that any of you viewers must know who they are by now, so I'll just say that the Hopewell were a woodland-era peoples who are noted as one of the earliest peoples to construct burial mounds and who most likely emerged out of central Ohio, their influence eventually spreading up through Canada and down through Georgia.
As time passed, the Mississippian influence took hold and they began building a mound city.
And I'm not going to explain Mississippian either because we've gone over that enough. Ocmulgee was built by a Mississippian peoples we call the Macon Plateau culture, an early peoples of the Mississippian timeline and an offshoot culture of the South Appalachian Mississippians. God, that's a tongue twister.
The largest mound you can see over my left shoulder, the Central Temple Mound.
Though a settlement for nomadic tribes for 10,000 years, the apogee of the Ocmulgee complex was during 950 to 1150 AD, when most of its mounds and structures were constructed, and solely by hand, I might add. A very focused group of skilled farmers who, after asserting agricultural dominance of the land and securing their status and power as an agricultural center, used nothing but bags and baskets and their bare hands to transport earth to this spot and then shape it into these mounds we see today. An extremely large plaza of earthen mounds, courtyards, living spaces, and a very notable and well-preserved circular underground earth lodge. These lodges were places to conduct meetings and important ceremonies, surely for any important business ranging on how to distribute food surplus, management of trade goods, settling of clan disputes, and electing leaders. This one at Ocmulgee has been carbon dated to 1050 AD. Its centerpiece is its temple mound, standing at 55 feet tall and overlooking the floodplain of the Ocmulgee River. It was a platform mound with a spiraling staircase oriented towards the floodplain. Spiral staircases have not been seen in any other mounds in the U.S., and this is just one of many unique features of Ocmulgee that makes it stand out from the rest, including its very spacious and wide layout, which was in contrast to the tighter designs of other Mississippian mound sites, which typically kept mounds packed closely together. It is believed these wide open spaces were to accommodate living quarters and family homes.
This place is complex and thick with stories. We know that they reached their peak in about 1100 AD and then fell into decline. After the Mississippians gradually abandoned the area, a new culture emerged that lasted from around 1400 to 1600 in this area, which might have been the next resurgence, the next evolution in mound building cultures. We call them the Lamar culture, and they are not found anywhere else.
Around 1200 AD, the Mekong Plateau culture dispersed and abandoned Ocmulgee, never to return to the city again. They moved to other outlying settlements, and their society declined in number and lost a lot of its cultural practice that was performed at Ocmulgee. They eventually turned towards a more nomadic lifestyle and ended up disappearing altogether. But the Lamar culture around 1350 AD emerged and resettled and rehabilitated the area for use in conjunction with their own and newly constructed nearby Mound City.
They started taking up mound building traditions again, and they built a small settlement nearby here that I cannot access because I didn't get the permit, because I don't do any research and I don't do any planning, and I just show up here at last minute. So maybe we'll cover it some other time. But Lamar Mounds is home to the only spiral mound in America. And what's even more significant about this site and the Lamar Mound site just south of here is that the Lamar Mound, the Lamar village, was visited by notorious asshole Hernando de Soto in the 1500s. It is one of the few instances of Spanish conquistador contact with a mound building culture. Now, the Lamar might have been that resurgence. They might have been that next generation of mound builders who flourished and created magnificent cities on this soil, but they had the misfortune of being on the route of Hernando de Soto. He and his men came here, stayed with them, left a bunch of diseased pigs behind. They didn't know the pigs were diseased, but the pigs carried smallpox and all sorts of diseases that the Lamar people did not have an immunity for. And shortly thereafter, they were pretty much wiped out. And as a little calling card, De Soto and his men, when they left, were so inspired by their visit to the city that they did what any wacko bastard, deviant demagogue would do. They erected, to somehow change their minds or to somehow honor I don't know who, they ascended one of their platform mounds and erected a giant wooden cross atop of it. How rude is that? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine like going to your friend's house and like, oh my God, I love what you've done with your kitchen. You've spent all your life working on this place and building it and tailoring it to your needs, and now I'm going to do what I want to do on your property because I think it's more important than what you're doing. It is a certain kind of madness. Imagine traveling, imagine crossing the ocean in the year 1500. In the year 1500, how difficult that is to sail from Spain to America and then to travel across from the coast to this part of central Georgia and to still hold on to that madness the whole time. Such insanity to the point that you're, after experiencing the trials and tribulations of that horrible, painful, difficult journey across the ocean, and then to land on new soil full of new plants, new animals, new people, new civilizations, you or I feel we'd be fundamentally changed by that. But these madmen, these monsters, held on to their stupid beliefs through all that pain, through all that torture, and all that sacrifice. They were not changed by the experience of landing here, by meeting these people. They held on to their insanity, and they succeeded in their mission, which was to destroy, to kill, divide, and conquer. We should never, ever, ever regard these people as explorers, and they still are in our history books. They are monsters. Monsters. We must acknowledge that about our past. We are descended from the foulest human beings who have ever graced this planet.
After being ravaged by smallpox, the Lamar and other late Mississippian cultures declined and disappeared. This is when virtually all cities and chiefdoms of North America were wiped out, desecrated, and destroyed, and of whose scant and scattered survivors formed the loosely banded nomadic tribes later European settlers would encounter and come to know as the Native American. These smaller tribal bands did not have enough people or resource to produce the kinds of agricultural surplus the residents of Ocmulgee needed to maintain power and control of trade, so it was completely unfeasible to maintain and supply a city of its size. Hence, Ocmulgee and so many other sites declined and descended into distant memory. In the late 18th century, surviving tribes regarded Ocmulgee as a sacred ancestral site, and it served as a place of pilgrimage, eventually becoming a settlement for mixed bands of Muskogee tribespeople and French fur traders.
So we're standing on top of the Temple Mound, the Mississippian ceremonial center, and everywhere about us we can see every era of this site and every age of its occupancy. All of this land was suddenly formed. It's a couple plateaus, but were cosmetically transformed by the first farmers who utilized the territory, the woodland peoples, and then who were eventually assimilated by or took over by the Mississippians, who turned this into a city, of which the center is this Temple Mound we're standing upon, and of which the main burial site is to my right, the Funeral Mound, which contains hundreds of burials of nobles who lived in this area over the hundreds of years that they ruled. And then over my left shoulder we see evidence of usage of the site after the city fell, the remnants of a old trading post used in the 1600s by the native tribes in the site, as well as the French traders. A blip of a moment, a hopeful moment of cooperation and coexistence that could have happened. This site, unconsciously, subconsciously, its psychic energy still acting as a gathering place for people of different cultures and different mindsets to gather and trade and communicate, but who were eventually wiped out by the white settlers, who then stayed here and made this massive monstrosity of a city we call Macon.